Hey guys, welcome back to Storytime episode 4, where we're going to be doing part 2 of Firestar. This has no pictures. So, yeah. And I'm going to be first, so here we go.
I'll do that second job.
Point Scarecrow, Canadian High Arctic. The bear was in the road, waiting for him, sitting, staring, squinting through the snow. Every aspect of his body shape spoke of provocation. It was here to mount a challenge, to make itself known. Something in the natural order had changed. He brought the pickup to a halt and switched off the engine, but left the headlights blazing at the bear. 5 miles on the odometer, 5 miles south of the polar bear research place. He glanced at the radio and opened a channel. Russ? Anders? Got a situation. Don't hear your engine. Broken down? Those are the realize we're going to get. It's a bear, Russ. Down your...
Speak clearly.
Don't hear your engine. You broke it down? Don't say those relays have burned out again. It's a bear, Russ. Down near Scarecrow. Jeez, what's a bear doing there at this time of year? I don't know. I'm about to take a look. I want to come down with the can. You got time for this? What about your flight? In his pocket, the Narwhal talisman buzzed. It sensed danger, very great danger. Bergstorm looked behind the seat at the loaded rifle. Ring the can, he said, and cut the radio link. Then he stepped out of the pickup, unarmed. Snow danced in the warmth of the headlights, silhouetted by their lazy beam. He walked forward at a non-aggressive pace. Icy clouds dusted around the bear's paws. It altered its stare, but not its position. 10 yards from contact, Bergstorm stopped walking. Bear twisted a forepaw, flexing the claws. Heavy, it said. Powerful, but cumbersome. Not a bear, then. A being inside a bear. You are Fane. You are interesting, the ice bear said. How did you come through the portal entry? How did you come through the portal? How did you come through the portal early? The bear blinked as if the question wasn't worthy of respect. I am tracing a young Fane which broke the continuum. You have been close to it, shaman. You redate Fane. A break. Greth, what had the wishing dragon brought back with him? Bergstorm stayed his breath. What is your purpose with the young Fane? He said. To retrieve it, to punish it, then to cleanse this world of dragon. No image of Goddess will travel back to the Fane. Why? That is not important. There is the fire of the dragon called Gawain, hidden. Speak the location or die. Why can't you detect it? The squint shortened. I will find it, shaman, and come back and burn your body to ash. The wind shifted, rolling the snow. Bergstorm moved. A hand and the lights of the pickup shrank to black. In that moment, he threw himself forward, changing in the blur to the shape of the bear. His teeth sank into the neck of the Fane, but it was strong and crushed the air out of his lungs with one gigantic closure of its paws. As he slid to the road, the Fane hit him with a blow across the back of his head that neither man nor bear could have possibly withstood. Then Russ found him 20 minutes later. His fur had been shredded with bloody lines, and the airstream falling out of his snout was less measurable than the weight of any snowflake. The lights of the pickup were on once more, drilling softly through the night. The vehicle's driver was nowhere to be found. Russ radioed a major alert. Dazed, he stood over the wounded bear, aiming a handgun at its head. Compassion demanded that he end its suffering. But though his firearm shook and his trigger finger short-ended, curiosity stayed his hand. Might they learn more with the bear alive? He put away the handgun and returned to his truck for a tranquilizing gun. And it was then, while His back was turned, that something squeezed out from behind the stricken body and rolled a short distance across the road. It was a piece of bone, cut long ago from a narwhal's tusk. The etchings on it were moving rapidly, trying to detect further traces of the fang. But the being had gone. To continue its search, and so the talisman obeyed primary order. In emergency, turn into the dragon. Graham. And seek out David Rain. Well, that's a big chapter.
It's a big chapter.
Big chapter name, that is.
This is locations.
Mm.
Abbot Hugo's office, Farlow Island, 1:35 a.m., February 12th. Once, in his childhood, temptation had turned Brother Bernard's head. In Mr. Sunit's, the convenience store, before the modernization had happened and electronic eyes had recorded all movement, he had stolen a tube of candy. He remembered the occasion well. How he had waited by the magazine rack until the chubby Mrs. Vickers had come down the aisle and stopped to examine the birthday cards, blocking the view from the payment counter. In that instant he had turned away from righteousness, away from his parents, his Sunday school, from good. Pocketing the candy had been the easy part. Leaving with them was a different matter. His legs, powered by a burning rush of guilt, had raced him too fast toward the door. He had bumped Mr. Cardle, the blind man with his dog. The collision had produced a variety of sounds, but the only ones Bernard remembered were the candy rattling like pellets inside their tube. "Hey!" Mr. Sunit had called, and Bernard had run. At 12 years old he had become a thief. He had never been caught, and the evidence was spilled down a drain within minutes, but his punishment was harsh and would last his life long. His mind was stained with indelible shame, and he could never go back to that shop again. He was thinking of these things as he slipped into Abbot Hugo's office in the early hours of that February morning. If caught here, his life would be all but over. For this was Mr. Sunit's shop again, only now the risks were so much greater. Beyond the island there was no shelter, no place to run, no drain wide enough to swallow his guilt. But the questions in his mind would not die down. Throughout the 5 long days of prayer and meditation, the motive for the creature's attack on Brother Terence had dogged him. Its chilling accusation that the raven was involved cast a shadow far wider than the common viewpoint, a consequence he dared not contemplate too far. But what of his own irrational decision to send a message to Wayward Crescent? What was he hoping to achieve by that? It made his head spin just to think about it, writing to a character in a book. Vincent. He must be allowed to talk to Brother Vincent, even though it meant breaking into his cell. Between them, they must formalize effective measures to persuade Abbot Hugo that these incidents required a level of scrutiny beyond narrow-minded bigotry. Everything must be brought into the open. Everything. He clicked on a flashlight, panning its weak beam over the wall until it struck the metal safe where the keys to every part of the monastery were kept. Barefooted, he crossed the room and opened the case as quietly as he could. The key to Brother Vincent's cell would be on the bunch with the bright orange tag. Locating it proved less than easy. The safe was never locked, but the contents were often moved around. In the flashlight's glare, every tag looked the same. Steadying his hand, he sifted through them, wincing if a loose key scraped the casing or tangled awkwardly against its hook. What should have taken seconds was moving into minutes when he at last identified the correct group of keys, dropped them into his pocket, and turned for the door. That was when he knew he was not alone. An intruder, down at floor level, small claws catching against the boards. Bernard shuddered and clicked off his light. If this was a mouse, or heaven forbid, a rat, he did not want to draw its attention. But the visitor was neither mouse nor rat. To Bernard's astonishment, a squirrel entered the veil of moonlight filtering in through the tall, arched window. It sat up on its haunches and twitched its nose, trying to focus on a scent of some sort. Twice it half-turned and poked its nose again. Then, with an effortless burst of agility, it leapt up onto the abbot's desk. Bernard watched with a kind of dazed fascination as it hopped toward the box drawers and reached up to sniff at them. It scented the frame of each drawer in turn, but seemed most drawn to the central one, the one containing the dragon's claw. By now, an idea was brewing in Bernard's mind that he was not the only thief in the room that night. But the outcome of this fantasy seemed so ludicrous that even when the squirrel gripped the painted wooden handle and began to twiddle it as though it were an acorn, he still did nothing to intervene. There was a pause. The squirrel rested and flagged its tail. Then, with hardly a space between the actions, it clamped the drawer knob between its teeth, yanked it open, and leapt inside. "No! gasped Bernard, and lunged across the room. Too late. A stream of bright gray fur poured out of the drawer into the dragon's, with a dragon's claw clamped tight between its jaws. "Stop!" Bernard shouted. The squirrel skidded to a halt on the corner of the desk. "Chip!" it throated, its dark eyes popping at the sight of human presence. With a whip of its tail, it turned in a flash and leapt off the desk. Bernard went in pursuit, but the race was never on. His shin collided with the corner of a footrest, knocking it over with a dreadful clatter. He reached for it, slipped, and shoulder-charged the shelves of perfume bottles. There was a crash of glass. Something pooled in the doorway. The nimble-footed squirrel leapt over it and was gone. Suddenly, a light went on. Bernard froze in terror. Abbot Hugo's face stared out of the doorway. His eyes panned the room, taking in the key safe and the drawer slid forward and tilting down. He inspected it. Empty. "Replace it," he said. Bernard covered his face. "Replace it!" roared the abbot. "I don't have it," Bernard wept. This was madness, a nightmare. The claw literally squirreled away. How could he explain it? How? The abbot turned, hearing footsteps close by. Brother Malcolm appeared, still tying the cord of his nightrobe. "I heard voices, breaking glass." His words tailed off into disbelief. The abbot plunged his hand into Bernard's robe pocket and pulled out the keys with the bright orange tag. Were they being taken or being returned? He threw them into Malcolm's hands. "Check that Brother Vincent is still in his cell." Question marks appeared in Brother Malcolm's eyes, but he knew not to argue with the abbot's will. As he hurried away, Hugo turned his ire on Brother Bernard again. "What were you hoping to achieve by this?" "The truth!" Bernard cried, sinking back against the desk. "There are things occurring here that you refuse to see, things that could change our world forever. The creature you have bound and treated so badly may be closer to God than you or I or any church ever built." "This is sickness," said the abbot, appalled. He crossed himself. "First Vincent, now you." "Since when was the truth an illness?" shouted Bernard. The abbot turned his head. Brother Malcolm had returned, pale-faced. "I cannot rouse him." The abbot's gaze narrowed. "Is he dead?" Malcolm gulped and shook his head. "He is sitting cross-legged by his window, praying. I cannot shake him from the pose. He seems taken by some kind of trance." "He must be working without the claw," muttered Bernard, "bending the universe by his will. It must have been him who sent the squirrel." The abbot seized him by the neck of his habit. "Stop babbling! What have you done with it?" "I've done nothing," Bernard said, his cheeks glowing red with rage. "The claw has been taken by a force you could never comprehend, but my guess is that it will not be long before you know precisely what became of it. For if the claw was not in its way to Vincent, then it was surely on its way to the dragon." In this, Brother Bernard was correct. Even as the thought had entered his mind, the squirrel was scrambling across the courtyard into the shadow of the stable block. In a blink it had wriggled beneath the padlocked door and bounded into the dragon's pen. The creature, sensitive to any warm blood, lifted its head and twitched its nostrils. Although it could not see the small gray messenger, the cargo it carried raised every flexible scale on its body. It growled and punched its head forward. Lively and fearless, the squirrel swerved away and dived between the dragon's open legs, taking care not to brush the talons with its tail. It dropped the claw as close to the injured back foot as it could. Then it turned and whisked back into the dark. A quietness came upon the hooded prisoner. Somewhere here was a shadow of the past, the scent of history, a trace of greatness. Instinctively, its feet moved toward that place, claws spreading wide above the dank and rotting straw. Like a compass needle, the claw of Gawain jumped and flickered, aligning itself with the toes of the foot. The dragon, Grockle, set his foot down, and just as the tooth of the ice bear Ragnarok had melded to the jaw of his descendant Ingvar, so the claw of the last great dragon, Gawain, joined the body of his distant son. When it came a tingling sense of belonging, connection to the earth, wisdom, power. And that's all for this book for tonight.
Goodbye. We'll see you next episode. Next time. My face is dark.